Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Beautiful Monday. Looks like we're supposed to get some snow today, unless you're joining us from sunny Florida, which I believe somebody on this call is.
And it's a beautiful day here, too. No snow. Beautiful day.
My name is Carl Diffenderfer, and this is Randy Miller. We're actually going to have another coach joining us shortly here as well today. And we're going to be talking about what I deem as a very important conversation for everybody. Now, we can look at this from a business standpoint. We can look at this from a personal relationship standpoint. We can also look at this just even from, I'm going to use the word, don't turn off the live feed. I'm going to say politics. We can also look at this from a political standpoint. And so I challenge you as we talk about this today, think about how does this affect your life? How can you apply this to you? And so we're going to be having a great conversation about this topic. Randy, why don't you share what is our topic title today?
The lost art of being considerate.
Yeah.
And it may not be a fully, completely lost art, but it feels like it's standing on the edge of the cliff.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Yes,
all right. I'm gonna add Jeff in here now. Jeff is one of our coaches, and he is part of the Higher Impact team. And so here we go. Jeff, welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, thank you. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Doing really good.
And I hope the audience is doing just as well.
Yeah. We have 5 viewers so far, but I hope that number goes up. Everybody tune in. We're going to talk about being considerate. And you're right, Randy, maybe it's not a lost art. But the reason I thought of this, I'm going to share a little story here. The reason I thought of this was, and I'm going to be like fully transparent with the viewers today. I like to move along when I'm on the highway. Unfortunately, we witness a lot of people not being considerate on the highway. And I think I'm going to raise my hand. I think I'm guilty of that too. I'm ready to get to where I'm going and I'm moving along. And I'm not one of the guys that sits in the left lane. I do get out of the left lane and let people around. But being considerate is something that we see evident in the way people drive. And I constantly see people like cutting people off and honking and getting upset. And yeah, I know COVID is definitely not helping with that. We've all kind of seen everybody's, emotional energy rise through COVID. But as I considered it, I was like, considered it. As I considered it, there's a dad joke for you. I just realized that we're losing that art of being considerate. So what does it mean? What does being considerate mean?
Well, I think bottom line is it considering someone else other than ourselves, considering, thinking about, being aware of, being mindful of those that are around you in addition to yourself. That's kind of what it means for me.
Yeah.
How about for you?
Yeah. So I have to. I'm that historian in me. I have to go to the 1828 American English Dictionary.
Yeah.
Our friend Noah Webster.
Yeah.
Noah, consider just means the verb in Latin means to consider, to view attentively, to sit by, to sit. That seems restful to me. So considerate rather than blasting through kind of things seems that whole sit by just is resonating with me. What it means to be considerate, sit by.
So that makes me think of the word pride. What does pride have to do with being considerate then?
Randy.
Good question. Oh yeah, you're going to throw me under the bus, are you? So I think that it's really the opposite, because pride is all about focusing on me, on myself. Excuse me, what I need. Giving attention to myself. Not only do I need to be able to do that, I need to be mindful of myself. but I need to go beyond that and be mindful of others as well, and to consider others. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
when you talk about pride, I always think of the opposite of it. I just go to humility is the opposite of it. So, I mean, anything it's unhumble is what's going on there. And I'm making up words as I go here. I get it, but
well, I think of just the idea of putting the needs of other before yourself, and that's not easy to do. That's humility. That's really kind of looking at what are their needs. You have to first of all be aware of that, and then after that you have to make an action behind it. Growing up, my mom was very much a person that, or is still, she's still with us. Was very much a person that was always thinking about how her actions affected other people, and so I kind of picked that up from her. Now, I think there is an unhealthy side to this, in that I think sometimes we're afraid of being rude to somebody else. And so we're constantly living in fear. And then other times it's just a pure desire to treat other people the way we'd like to be treated. I don't know. I've never asked her which way she was thinking when she was doing it, but I think, we as human beings need to be careful not to be afraid, A, but then B, we need to be looking at how what we do affects others. And that to me is being considerate. What do you guys think about that?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it is putting someone else's in front. And interestingly enough, it's interesting you brought your mom into the mix. I'm just working this morning on my mom just went home to be with the Lord here on Saturday. And so I'm just in the process of going through writing her obituary, writing through just her life, just in celebration of who she was. And that it's interesting because one of her friends, I asked her about around my mom's bedside, mentioned about her, one of the things that if she could, I asked her what are like 3 words or less, how she would describe my mom. And that whole word, not considerate, but I kind of like that word, is share. She was a sharer. And so there's something to that brings in not only yourself, but it's, considerate as being sharing yourself and that other person sharing themselves with you, if that makes sense. So I went on a long diatribe there, but Randy, what do you think there, brother?
What was the question again, Carl?
So I was talking about the idea of watching what other people need and being aware of what's going on for them and how your choices are affecting them.
First of all, I think to be an example of what we're talking about, Considerate, Jeff had no idea that your mom had passed, especially so close to our being here today. And our heart goes out to you and your family. And so we want to be considerate of of where you are in that process. And I know I've been with many, many people who have started and are in that process. And, it's a tough place to be. I've been there at least 3 different times with 3 different, actually 4 different times with parents. And not only my parents, but my wife's parents. And it's a tough place to be. So we want to take a moment to consider where you are in that process. I was thinking about too, Carl, what you're saying, in this kind of day and age, sometimes you question how to serve someone, how to be considerate of them based on their thinking about it. So, and I'll give you an example. This just happened to me just a few weeks ago. I was about to go into a store. Now, if you're from the South, that would sound like I was fixing to go in the store. So I translated in my head before I said it. But if I was about to go into the store and I considered holding the door for someone who was behind me, and it was, and I knew this woman was walking into the store at the same time or near the same time I was. So I started to hold the door. I did, but it's something that I thought, should I actually do this? What will she think about it? And then fast forward, it might have even been that evening, or definitely within the next couple of days. I was at a restaurant with my wife, and we were having dinner, and I noticed that there were people who just walked in front of one another. It didn't matter who it was. It wasn't male, female issue. It was just, they just walked in front of each other and let the door close, and didn't consider the simplicity of considering holding the door for the person that was immediately behind them. Now, they appeared to be strangers. I don't think they were together, but I thought, I know it just came to mind for me, how inconsiderate of each of the people. And it wasn't just one or two. It was like, I saw a number of people do that. And I thought about our discussion today and just about how inconsiderate that is. And it was like, first of all, were they even aware that someone else was behind them or coming in the door? And what would it have taken to put the effort forth just to consider the other person and be kind to the other person? And I know that word kindness is coming up in our discussion today, but it's just a matter, it's an act of kindness towards someone else as well.
Yeah. And the word serve, I think that's another key part of it. When we think about serving, we're saying, okay, how can I put the needs of somebody else first? I think service is actually it moves right into the next part of our conversation. And that is really looking at the original meaning, the Greek meaning of the word love. There's a scripture that talks about loving your neighbor as yourself. And in our culture today, we are taught that the meaning of love is always transactional. It always is a two-way street. I'm going to do this to get this. But that's not the original intent of the word love. Actually, the Greeks had 6 different meanings of the word love. So I think we're going to go through these today just briefly. We're not going to spend a ton of time on them, but look at the 6 different types of love and say, okay, well, which one do I need to focus on? Which one could challenge me to become better with love? Now, for starters, though, how would you I'm going to throw you guys under the bus here. How would you define love?
Well, that's pretty simple for me, actually.
Okay.
I often, and I know, and I'll drop this here. You mentioned the scripture. I often have the opportunity of performing a wedding ceremony. I typically do quite a number of those in the year, and it's pre-COVID and just beginning. In fact, I have one coming up this weekend, and often, not always, but often, the passage of scripture from 1 Corinthians 13 is used, verses 4-8, and it says, "Love is," and then it gives you this statement: "Love is patient and kind." And I often like to say that patience is kind of it's an internal, invisible thing, because it's an attitude first that is within the person who is going to then present kindness. So to me, it's really the simplest definition of love. And I know there are the other definitions that we're going to look at shortly, but for me, it means having an attitude and action connected to the attitude. And so the kindness is the action. So I know that using it in the wedding context, of course, we're talking about, a marriage and a couple and so forth, but it's far broader. When 1 Corinthians was written, it wasn't written just about marriage. It was written about our inner attitude toward others, and how the attitude of being patient with others. Your mention of driving, the impatience that we have, whether it's that, or if we're standing in line, if we've our anger meter or frustration meter goes up very quickly if we have an expectation of doing something more quickly, or that we feel disrespected in some way. I mean, it can ramp up rapidly. And that is because of the inner attitude, our self-perception and the perception of others. So that's, for me, that's simple. It's patient and kindness, attitude and action.
Jeff, how about for you?
That's the word. Way to go. I'm just going to say word. You said it. I can't add to that, bro. So word up. Okay.
I think also we need to identify that if we're going to be considerate of others, then love is not based on feeling. It's so often so easy for us to say, well, I don't feel like I love this person, or I get love from this person, or I receive. And it really has nothing to do with feelings. It's a verb. It's an action. There's a song that was written about that many, many years ago.
You're going to wrap it for us there.
No, I'm not going to
wrap it for us.
But you know what I mean? We don't often think about the action associated with it. So it's cool that you brought that up, Randy. It's an attitude and an action.
That is good.
That's good. So to our guests watching as we talk about consideration, and I'm going to write that down here, or being considerate. How about we say it that way? How would you define love? I'm going to make a post here to our different profiles and love to hear from you and your thoughts. So as we talk about being considerate, the question is, how would you define love? Okay. Let's keep moving through this here. Let's talk about the 6 different types of love by the Greeks now. Randy, what's the first one? Let's talk about that one. Why don't you share with that one with us?
You know, as I read through these, it prompted, and I would suggest this for the listener and the viewer today, that it prompted me to look at it from a different perspective, as if I were moving in a space and looking at something from a different place. Because each time I did that, it helped to kind of expand and remind and help me define it. So the first one is eros. So it's sexual passion. It has to do with the sexual passionate connection with someone else. That's first.
Yeah, and did you know that the word erotic comes out of eros? Very interesting.
Yeah. The root.
The root, yes.
The root of it. Yeah.
And honestly, that's what, I mean, if we look at our culture, we're kind of taught that that's what we should focus on when it comes to love. I think that's probably the least important of all of them. And it's interesting that the Greeks kind of quantified love in 6 different categories. It's like, wow. I mean, when I say, I mean, when you think about it, you can say, I love coffee and I love my wife. Well, come on. Like, how do you say that you love both of those? It doesn't work.
Yeah.
All right. So the second one is Philea, or deep friendship. And so this is, the Greeks actually valued this far more than sexuality or eros. It's talking about deep comrade friendship that's developed between brothers in arms who fought on a battlefield, or showing loyalty for your friends or sacrificing for them, as well as sharing your emotions with them. And so I think it's interesting, Philea. Now, I think the word Philadelphia actually comes from this. Do you guys know if that's true?
Yes.
Sure does.
Yeah.
It is.
So brotherly love, that's where Philea. Yeah. And by the way, everybody, we'll post the link to this article later on once we're done with today, so you guys can look at the article and learn from it. There's a ton of really good information in there, so I challenge you to read through it. It's good stuff. Okay, so the next one, Randy, why don't you go ahead and share the next one?
I think it's pronounced ludus, Ludus, and it's playful love. You know, and I see this in when families are playing together, when others, if you're part of a team, and it's actually, there's a connection maybe between those two, the one you just mentioned, Philea and Ludus, in that you create a bond with someone else in that brotherly context or sister context, if you will, and that gives you opportunity to know one another enough to be playful. And I think we do that a lot. We, in our conversations on and off, we've done it already today here, is that we can be playful with one another, and that is an expression of, I hesitate to put it like light love, but it is the idea of having a playful way about relationship that allows you to kid with one another, to have pranks with one another that don't go over the top, that are accepted by one another.
I'm never guilty of that.
Considerate of one another. There we go. Let's get.
I never give Randy a hard time.
That allows us.
That's good, bro.
Pause for a moment of prayer for Carl. You're getting close there.
Yes, my kids. Yeah, my poor unfortunate kids. They're like my social project sometimes, or my social testing. How are they going to respond to this?
There you go.
When you're doing it, and I've been on social media enough to see pranks that people play on one another that are just they're funny to one person and not funny to the other.
Yeah.
And that is not the expression of this word talking about. Playful love is something that both can enjoy simultaneously.
Yeah. Can I add, just interject? I mean, it's not prankful love, it's playful love. Like, pranks are meant for, your sake, that pride kind of thing. They're meant to, like, you get something out of it, but certainly not considerate, So I agree with you, bro. I like that playful love. Again, word up. You got your definition, man. You're my new Noah Webster, man.
Well, but also taking into consideration with this, so playful love should still be considerate. So you're going to say, okay, how is this going to affect the other person? Will they laugh with me, or will it embarrass them? Mm-hmm. And I'm not always very good at distinguishing between the two. I just sometimes do things and then, they didn't like that so much, I've gotten a lot better at it as I've gotten older. Maybe I'll be as good as Randy someday. I don't know, but there's my age joke for the day.
There you go. Set the bar. That's pretty high bar, bro.
I felt it was coming.
So for those of you that don't watch our stuff frequently, I'm always giving Randy a hard time about the difference in our age.
I know where he's going with the hair thing too. So
I've earned every one of these, even the ones that have fallen out.
And you're looking good at it, man. You're looking good.
That's our Ludus love for each other. Yeah. All right. So the fourth one I'm going to have Jeff talk about, and it's agape. It's love for everyone. Jeff, what is agape love? Let's talk about that.
Wow. I'm going to defer to Randy again. I was actually thinking of doing more the Storge. I love that one. And in light of where I'm at right now, I think I could maybe testify a little bit to what Storge love is. But Randy or Carl, go ahead. I'm going to defer to you.
All right, well, I'll talk about agape. Agape is the opposite of eros in the sense that it doesn't expect anything in return. And I think if we're honest with each other, a lot of what we do is with the hope. Maybe it's not an expectation, but we hope that that person's going to respond in a way that gives to us in return. C.S. Lewis called it the gift love. And, it's real easy. It's easier to give a gift when you hope for something in return. It's harder to give a gift when there are no strings attached. And so agape is the purest form of love. It's not self-seeking. And if we kind of go back to the love chapter, it keeps no record of wrong and all those different things. That's the actual type of love that was referenced in that scripture. It was the word agape was the actual Greek word that was used. And so when we identify love towards others, we need to assess our motivation. Are we doing this with the hope just the hope that there's going to be some kind of reciprocity in return? Or is it actually just purely sincere? I just want to give this to you. I want to bless you. And if you never do anything, even if you just hate me in return, I don't care. I'm just going to love you. That's hard. That's so hard to do. Yeah, so that's agape. Number 5 is pragma. That's the long-standing love. And
if I might, that word challenged, challenged me in a way that it challenged the broader view. I thought, when you, it uses actually for those who, when you go to the link, you'll see this teased out more for each one of these topics, each one of these words. But when I read this and I read the definition that they apply to this, I thought, a long-term relationship, that's what this is about. Long-standing love. That, there's the old running joke that says, the guy that told his wife that he loved her when they got married, and years later she said, "You don't ever say you love me anymore." And he said, "Well, if it changes, I'll let you know." That isn't an expression of long-standing love. The long-standing love is that you continue to express your love in a whole variety of ways, but because it's long-standing, there is a deeper understanding, and there are different ways that you will express love to one another because you have a deeper understanding of each other. And this is not just about couples, it's about friendships, knowing. I was thinking about, my sister, who lives within just under 20 minutes from where we live, and we were having lunch together yesterday, and my wife Patty and I and her husband Rick, and the 4 of us were sitting and talking, and we were laughing and kind of kidding. She and I were kidding with each other, and there was a moment when something was said, and I just reached over and touched her on the arm, and I said, "We know because we love each other." And there are things that we know about one another now that we didn't know when we were kids, and that allows us to love one another in a different way as a brother and sister. So it's similar too of deep friendships. I can have a friend, Darren Gerald, who's he actually is a pastor as well in Frederick, Maryland, and Darren and I have been friends for years, and I can ask Darren questions and talk to Darren in ways that is such at a deep level, as well as he can with me, at a deep level that you just might not be able to do with other people, because they wouldn't understand where your heart is, even if it's a very tough question. You mentioned politics earlier. No matter what the question is about, and no matter what the divisions are, we can have a conversation about it. And it's that long-standing love for one another. In this context, as brothers together, we can, in that deep friendship, have those kinds of conversations.
Yeah. So now, interestingly, for those watching, I would bet that you're probably like, okay, you're kind of sideswiping me here, because your topic is the lost art of being considerate, and yet here we are talking about love. Randy, Jeff, how would you connect the two of those? And then we'll continue through the list of love words.
I'm going to go back to, the 3 words that you used. It's an attitude and action. And considerate is there's an art to it, and there's a science to it of being considerate. So there's that, how do you say it? There's something about the art of it that you really can't see, but it's happening, amongst 2 friends or a couple, you name it, that love plays out. But the science of it just plays out in real time then, as far as and that action is going to take place, and being considerate is going to be that you know all these things, your attitude is in the right place, and then it just you be considerate universally. Though it doesn't necessarily mean just between friends. You just start that. The more you practice it, I think that's what the more you practice the science of it, the more you're going to be better at the art of it, you know? So it's, I'm kind of going around in circles a little bit, but that's kind of how I view like how considerate and love kind of pair together. So
yeah. Randy, what do you think?
Yeah, I would think, and again, I'll use Darren as an example, is that if I place a phone call, I mean, we used to see one another face to face a lot because we saw one another during the week a number of times. Now, me living in Florida and him being in Maryland, we don't. So when I make a phone call or he makes a phone call to me, we clear the time first. Is this a good time? Or I might even, because I'm considering him ahead of just making a phone call and hoping that he can take it, I might text him and say, you know, when's a good time for a quick call? Or do you have a moment? Or, you know, and if not now, when would you be available? I'm trying to consider his schedule, his ability to give attention. He may, who knows what's happening on his side of the conversation or before the conversation. So I want to be considerate of him, and he does the same thing to me. So consideration and love, I think, connect together really well in that idea that, you know, it can be a person who's a stranger to me, but I can see, in fact, I'll give an example. There was a couple during this time when Patty and I were having dinner just the other day, as I gave the example. we saw a couple, had two small children. They were probably 4 and 7, maybe. And the mom, we saw the mom had a couple of coloring books and some things for the kids to do. And there was, because of staffing at the restaurant, there was a lot of delay. So they were able to order, but they didn't get their food quickly. And it was the same for everyone. But when you have two small children, it ramps up the anxiety level. You know, mom came prepared, dad was prepared. They engaged them in conversation. They did they colored in their coloring books. They talked about the coloring things that they were doing. But the thing that we noticed, Patty and I just recognized that these two children were very well behaved. And she and I acknowledged that happens at home first before it happened there in that restaurant setting. And so when we noticed it, you know, we could have said it to one another, and they were sitting right behind me at a table just behind me. So when we noticed it and spoke of it, I could have turned around right then and said it. But to consider the couple, the family, their activity, they didn't have their food yet. You know, considering that moment, I waited until we were ready to leave, and they were well into having their food. So there was no anxiety that, you know, all of that anxiety had diminished or gone down significantly at least. And so when I got up, I turned to the couple and I said, I just wanted to appreciate that your parenting at home shows up here in this restaurant, because I just wanted to thank you and applaud your efforts. And I looked at the two kids and said, well done. You guys have just really been great. I know it was a long time before you got your food, but, you know, and I just acknowledged it, but it was about timing. It was about what was I going to say? How was I going to say it? What was I going to acknowledge? All of that was considering them. But to your point, Jeff, I think really that is an example of the art and science, because the science part of it was I learned years ago about how important timing is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how important the words you use, what vocabulary would you choose to use that would have impact with the mom and dad, and then differently with children. And I tried to, and I'm going to use the word, I tried to consider that, so I was considerate of who they are, and they were so appreciative of that.
And that's there again, that wisdom, brother, you're bringing. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
it's there, and it's here, and it's a lot of ways, man. So yeah, okay.
All right. So continuing on, the number 5 word was pragma, and that's the long-standing love. And it's interesting, Eric Fromm said that we spend a lot of energy on falling in love, and instead we need to learn how to stand in love. So it's precisely about standing in love for that person. And when we look at, relationships falling apart, we look at business relationships, marriages, you name it, they're falling apart. And ultimately, it's just standing in love. And I think one of my greatest cravings as I look at relationship are the people that are willing to go through the tough times with you. Those are your real friends. Anybody can be friends with somebody and have fun and do whatever you're going to do. But the moment you have conflict in that relationship, how that person handles that conflict is paramount to the future of your relationship, and also how you handle it too. Do you guys have any thoughts to add to the word pragma?
I'm gonna
default
word
again.
up. Yeah, I'm gonna go word up. And that was some good words. Both of you. I mean, thanks. That's good.
Okay, that's good. We'll keep moving here.
How about you, Randy? Any closing words on number 5?
Yeah, I was thinking that the connection between pragma and number 6 connects for me. It's the it goes back to what you said in the beginning, Carl, about transactional love or transactional relationship, not transactional love, because I don't believe love is transactional. That love is about someone. It's about the other. It's not about me. I must love self. I must have a relationship that's a positive, good relationship with self in order to love others more than adequately, beyond myself. I have to be secure enough in myself that it's not about me, it's about another. It's about them. And I was thinking about this. You just mentioned, Carl, of business, and you said, and in business. It's, longstanding relationship. And you and I talked about this so many years ago when we first met, that becoming a trusted advisor, trusted in the sense that I know that, if I'm in a business relationship with others, that they have my best interest at heart, and that they know I have their best interest at heart. And I saw the example. I'll go back to yesterday's meal at lunch with my sister Linda and my brother-in-law Rick. One of the things that came up was that Rick he's the co-founder of SK Global, and it's a company that reaches into Europe, across the U.S. and other. They have some major clients that they work with. If I were to mention their names, you would know those clients, football teams as well as other major corporations. And a statement was made about Rick. And the statement was that there are times when he can choose whether or not to push for something or to give that something to the client because it's best for the relationship. And thinking about that, it really prompted me to consider that in business, being the trusted advisor, it starts with being trusted.
Yeah.
And that's really about, are you thinking about me more than you are about you and what the ultimate benefit is? And I know that many of the people that are watching right now, they're not only in other kinds of relationships, but they need to and want to consider what this means in business relationships. And sometimes that's a tough choice to make, especially when you're at a financial difficult time. It's hard to give when it's hard to give. And it's, so that's
yeah, that's good. The final word. I'm going to keep us moving here just for the sake of those watching. I know maybe you're on your lunch hour, maybe you're just taking a break, but the sixth one is a very interesting one. It's I don't know how to pronounce this, Philea, and it's the love of self. Now I think it's interesting that the Greeks defined the idea of loving self. In Scripture, it also says that love your neighbor as yourself. The context of the word there is agape, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. But the idea is this, that you can't love somebody else if you can't love yourself. If you can't like yourself, then how are you going to love somebody else? You got to love your own skin. And so with that, a lot of people, they get frustrated in life. They're discontent. They're maybe they're frustrated with the situations that have been placed in their world, and that kind of like bubbles out, right? Everybody gets to see that then, and it's not fun to be around, and you feel bad for the person, but it's I think it's important for us to choose to be okay in those situations. Now, you can take this to the extreme level too, where narcissism would be another version of self-love. And that's not especially good, because narcissism is only being willing to see things through your lens and not even really caring. There's no empathy as to how you might affect others. And so I'm not recommending that at all, but loving yourself in the sense of taking care of yourself enough to be able to take care of others. And I guess it's kind of with the intent, I'm going to take care of me so that I'm my best for others, as opposed to I'm going to take care of me because I love me so much. It's not healthy. What do you guys have to say about this?
Yeah, it sounds to me as if where you're going with that is, I think of it like on the airplane. You see the oxygen masks. If they come down, it says, you're supposed to put the oxygen mask on first.
Yep.
And then that's when you're best equipped to help someone else. So I'm not sure what the Greeks were implying by that, but as I look at it, that's the kind of love of self that's needed in order for you to be a blessing to someone else. So,
yeah, it's kind of like, I need to have a good night's sleep. If I don't, then I can't serve. I can't serve my clients well if I'm not well rested. Yes. So, those kinds of things are that. It is about me so that it's about others.
There you go.
So that, yeah, good word. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just recently, I'm working with a client where there's a need, and they realize this, that there's a need within to change their perspective because of their own anxiety about their, price or value proposition or whatever. I mean, they're thinking about all these things. And I suggested to them, I said, I'd like for you to do this. This was an exercise. I'd like for you to do this. I want you to take a piece of paper, do this pen and paper, not digitally, pen and paper, take a piece of paper, like college ruled, and write 1 through 21 all the way to the bottom. Usually there's like 22, 23 lines. So you write 1 to 21, and then you start writing in bullet form 1 or 2 words about the result of your services for your client. So the note that I gave them on this was, so that requires that you stand in the client's shoes to see, some in the selling environment, we might call it what the pain point is for the client. What's the problem? What's the challenge? What are they facing? Yep. And stand in their shoes so that you can help them solve the problem, challenge, pain, whatever the situation is. Recently it came up with another who was having difficulty with an employee, and we talked about how to have a crucial or important conversation. And I love what Joseph Grendy says in the book Crucial Conversations. He says you have 30 seconds. He calls it the hazardous half minute. You have 30 seconds to communicate mutual purpose and mutual respect.
Mhm.
And that really, to me, that captures a great deal of what we're talking about today, being considerate of the other person, so that you can hear together. Because if we don't feel that, we are always testing the intent of why someone is saying something to us. So if I'm being considered in the way you're beginning the conversation, I can listen. I have an open heart because I have an open ear to hear you. And then problems, challenges can be easier solved. It doesn't mean it's not a magic bullet by any means, but it means that I'm going to let you know I respect you and who you are and what you do, and that we both have a mutual purpose in the work that we do here. So with that said, and then you move along with the conversation, and that it's the reaction from my client that said, wow, that really helped when I went to have that conversation. It really helped me because it affected their attitude first before they even began the conversation with the other person. So, consider it.
Well, and Randy, I mean, you're right on. I mean, that attitude and action. I mean, it really that lost. It is lost a bit. It's that lost arc, or the lost art of consideration of for whatever reason. I mean, we could go into it, all the philosophy and all that, philosophize all we want, but those three words make up all the difference. It's your attitude, turn to action, or three. That's four. So attitude plus action.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
You can just say it. We're not going to count. Come on.
So no, I mean, but thanks for that. I mean, I think all in all, consideration is just, it's your attitude of an attitude that puts that person before you, which is rare. I mean, as us as selfish, prideful human beings, and then turning toward that person, and as we talked about, consider means to sitting by them and just considering them.
So Carl, I can't help but when he said sit by, that to me, when you said that earlier and when you're now saying it again, it makes me kind of feel that sense of rest. It's the lack of anxiety, that you're at peace. And I honestly, I can't help but say this. It's that it reminds me so much of those of you who are familiar with this. It'll ring a bell real quickly, and that's Galatians 5, and it's in the scripture, Galatians 5:22 and 23. It says, "Love is the fruit of the Holy Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." And for me, when I look at this, I think of it like this. The fruit of the Holy Spirit is love, big, huge period at the end of that word. Everything else that follows in that passage is the result of love.
Yeah, it's what proves that there's love behind it, right?
Yeah.
So
the action. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
And a result of being able to be joyful. If you're anxious, if you're, if it's something else is happening and it's not love, you're not going to find joy in it.
Right. There's not anxious rest. There's not. That's
right. Your word.
It's joyful rest, but there's not anxious kind of rest.
Exactly.
I can't put those two together,
Again, Jeff, mic drop for you.
Right back at you, brother.
I love it. So it's like that, and then again the word patience, and then kindness is there, and having sense of goodness. There's just this deep quality of life that's just goodness. And faithfulness is that, loyalty, stick-to-itiveness. I'm going to say and do what I say because I am. It's not just because it's something that I say, it's because it's my desire to be faithful, because
Yeah.
I have a deep faithfulness. And then gentleness is that expression again of that action. And then I think this is often strange for people to think of self-control as an expression of love.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is.
Or in our cases, we're talking about the art of consideration, of being considerate. Yeah, self-control is that timing you talk about, Randy, and all those kind of things that weigh into it as we have that attitude. And if I may just interject, one of the books that comes to mind for me is Andy Andrews' book, if you've ever read it, called The Noticer.
Oh, yeah, that's a good book.
It is a wonderful book on that noticing, and the guy that is this, I picture him as like a grandfatherly figure that kind of comes along people and being considerate, noticing, but then moving toward love, and consideration moves then toward that person to notice, not only notice, because there's a lot of us people watchers out there. We love to watch what people are doing and we go, oh yeah, I'm good at like that person needs that or that. We end up kind of psychoanalyzing that person without really knowing anything. We're not considering who these people are. But then the book really does a great job of it's a good picture in my mind of how we can love and notice and be considerate and love in action. So,
Carl, I have, we don't often do this, but I'm gonna throw a pass at you here. So when you've been coaching business people for quite a long time. When you think of love and self-discipline and the owner or professional, how does that self-discipline in the owner or professional's life, if you will, and their association with maybe its employees, customers, clients, how do you see that often a challenge for them, and how do they work through that?
Yeah, so interesting, because when I trace the problems that I identify inside of an organization, most often there's a people part of it. It's not always completely people, but there's a big part of it that's people related. And whenever I identify a culture issue inside of an organization, we could trace it back to this very conversation right here. And the reason I say that is that a business owner that loves his team the way they need to be loved, when a business owner does that, that creates an engagement from their team that causes a forward movement of that team, where people get along better, they feel more valued, they feel like they have more purpose, they feel like they belong. But here's a great example. Whenever you see a kid misbehaving in a grocery store or something like that, your tendency is to say, man, what's going on with that kid? But every time, I swear to you, and when I talk to friends about this and they're having problems with their little kids, I'll say, okay, go spend some time with that kid in a way that's meaningful to them. Play trucks, do whatever you need to do, but spend time with them that's in a way that's meaningful to them, and see what changes. See if your child starts behaving. And it works every time. They'll come back and they'll be like, that was so simple, but it was crazy. The same is true of our teams inside of our organization. I'm not calling your team a little kid, by the way, but I am saying that, we as business owners, as leaders, need to take the time to care about the people on our team, to understand what's going on for them. Then add to that the concept of self-discipline. I see business owners that really want their business to serve them, but they don't put the effort into serving their business. And so they don't get out of it what they want to get out of it. They're frustrated. They're disgruntled. They're like, why do I keep doing this? It's because they don't understand that the self-discipline actually creates freedom. I'm going to let that resonate for the people for a second that are listening. Self-discipline creates freedom. I struggled with this for so many years. But at the end of the day, the more self-disciplined I am, the more satisfied I am with life. It actually creates freedom for creativity, innovation, everything that I love to do. It actually creates the space for that. And so a business owner often wants those things. They want to be able to work less. They want to be able to have more freedom to innovate and do new things inside their business. And they don't realize it's because they're so undisciplined in all these areas over here that creates a mess, and they're constantly having to put out fires that actually keeps them from being able to do what they love to do over here. And so it kind of applies to the business owner and to the team, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, the team, I'm sorry to interrupt. The
No,
team
you're okay.
reflects that. The team reflects that. And
Yep.
I, approximately 10 years ago, I left a national organization. There were a number of reasons, but one that was the trigger reason for me. This was, there was a hurricane that not only was approaching, but had come on shore. The team leaders, 1 week before the hurricane, had met with all the district managers, and they trained us on the topic of, and it was really weird because it's kind of about what we're talking about today, being aware and training and encouraging and developing our employees and our managers that we oversaw and so forth. And it was all about, the training was all about someone else. 1 week later, a hurricane comes on shore. The first persons at 2:00 in the afternoon, all of the management went home. Everyone else was required to stay in their stores, even in the area where the hurricane was. That it's like if you're a manager or owner, you can't say one thing and then do another, because your team says, wait a minute, they really don't mean what they say.
Yeah.
So being considerate of others that goes back to that self-discipline thing. Don't say it if you're not going to follow through with it.
Yeah, 100%.
You say it. When you say it, follow through with it. That goes to the self-discipline and, if you will, company and team discipline. It's worse if you say it and then you don't follow through with it. It was kind of the trigger for me that said, you believe you're more important than we are.
Yep. Yeah. Well, guys, I need to wrap us up here just for the sake of those watching. I wanted to try to keep us to an hour today. Really good content today in our conversation. I hope all of you were able to take some little key pieces away that will help you in your journey to being more considerate. Remember, it's about putting other needs, the needs of others first, and you will reap a reward from that. So don't just think I'm saying this to make it one-sided and you'll never get anything. But you do need to keep in mind you need to consider your intentions as you do these things, for sure. So 2 upcoming things that I think may help you even go further that I want to just share with you. Number 1, December 3rd. I know, can you believe it? We're almost at December. December 3rd, 10 a.m. We're going to be doing a workshop called It's My Pleasure. And it's by the lady who's in charge of HR for Chick-fil-A. And so we're going to learn from her. It's 6 different mini conversations. And after those conversations, we're actually going to be doing some networking with each other. We're going to be having conversations with each other about what we're learning about. We're limited to 50 people. We're already getting reservations for it. So if you would like to join us, I challenge you to sign up for it. It's on our Facebook page. You can email me, message me, whatever it is that you need to be able to figure out how to join us. We'd love to have you there. And that's a free event, by the way. And then finally, on December 3rd, I believe, let me look here. No, that was December 3rd. December 7th is our next CEO experience. This is for C-level executives who want to get together with other business leaders and learn more about how to be a better business leader. We're going to do case studies. We're going to look at best ideas. We're going to challenge each other, grow together. And our topic this coming month on December 7th is team ownership, how to develop team ownership. So ironically, we're kind of covering some of the same topics. Now that event, it is an all-day event from 9 to 4. Space is limited. I think I have 11 people confirmed as a yes, and I have space for 14. So if you are interested, please reach out to me sooner than later, because there won't be any seats left. And otherwise, we're going to continue doing events like these, Jeff and Randy and I and a few of the other coaches, and we're going to talk about some of these key things that people are people are facing inside of the organization. If you have a topic you'd love to talk about with us, please let us know. Love to hear your ideas of what's important to you, and look forward to meeting with you next time. Any closing thoughts from either of you? Or let's start here. What's your greatest takeaway out of today? What did you like most about our time together today?
Randy, beauty before age. How's that? So you're beauty.
Steal yours, though. You should have gone
I'm
first.
going to give you the beauty.
Well, I really, really enjoy hearing your perspectives and prompting some of the thinking that I'm going to be leaving with today. And I know others can find the similar value. I can't not hear this in my head, though. So on our way out, I just have to say, Carl, thank you again for making this happen. And if you were to ask me, so what do you think about it? And I'm glad that I'm here. I would just say, it's my pleasure.
Great. That's good. I think for me, the idea of attitude and action.
That's huge takeaway there too. And so I'm going to finish with that word up. And yeah, that's great. Thanks so much. All you guys. I appreciate Higher Impact too you've been considerate of me over the years, and really want to give a shout out, drop the mic to Higher Impact. Thanks for Carl. Yeah. I mean, this is, what you've started, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it. So,
thank you. I'm here to serve. I love you guys. I love all of our audience, people that are watching, and it's a good love. It's not self-serving.
That's right. It's all 6, maybe. We're getting all 6 of them in there. How's
that? Yeah. All right, everybody. Great to see all of you. We'll be turning this into a podcast in the future, so if you want to go back and listen to it, you certainly can. And look forward to seeing you next time. As I said before, post your comments. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are and what other topics you'd like to discuss. Thank you, everybody. Take care. We'll see you.
Blessings, guys.